Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
The early morning mist still clung to the underbrush as Tom adjusted his camera, crouching near a cluster of dense ferns. His eyes scanned the treeline, his focus on capturing the elusive cerulean warbler rumored to nest in this part of the woods. The forest was unusually silent, the usual chatter of wildlife subdued, as if the world was holding its breath. Suddenly, a soft whirring sound cut through the stillness, drawing Tom's attention away from his photographic hunt. He tucked his camera against his chest, curiosity piqued, and moved toward the source. Pushing through a thick brush, he stumbled into a small clearing and stopped dead in his tracks. Before him, partially obscured by the ferns, lay a bizarre, sleek object unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was elliptical, shimmering with a metallic glow that seemed to pulse gently. As he approached, the air around it tingled with static. "Whoa, what have we here?" Tom muttered to himself, reaching out tentatively. "Don't touch that," a voice hissed from behind him. Startled, Tom spun around. A man, around his age, dressed in hiking gear, emerged from the trees. His face was marked with concern. "I'm Jack," he said, extending a hand cautiously as he kept his eyes fixed on the strange object. "I saw it fall from the sky. Thought it was a downed satellite or something." Tom, still recovering from the surprise, shook his hand. "Tom, I thought it was some kind of art installation at first. This part of the forest is pretty remote for something like that, though." Together, they circled the object, keeping a respectful distance. "You think it's safe?" Tom asked, lowering his camera to hang by his strap. Jack shrugged. "Not sure, but I noticed it started doing that." He gestured toward the object, right after it landed. As they watched, part of the object shifted, revealing a crack that emitted a soft, blue light. From within, they heard faint groans. "Someone's in there," Tom exclaimed, his instinct to help kicking in. Together, they approached the crack. Peering inside, they saw an unconscious figure, humanoid but distinctly different. The figure had luminous skin and delicate, wing-like structures on its back that flickered with iridescent light. "We need to get them out," Jack said decisively. "They might be hurt." Tom nodded, and they worked together to pry the crack wider. With considerable effort, they managed to open a passage big enough to reach inside. "I'll do it," Tom said, as he carefully maneuvered his arms inside the craft, trying to avoid disturbing the technology, or magic, more than necessary. Gently, he lifted the figure, who was surprisingly light, and carried them out of the craft. Laying the being on the soft moss, Tom and Jack examined her more closely. She was breathtaking, her features finely chiseled and otherworldly. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, indicating she was alive, but possibly in shock. "We should get her to my cabin," Tom suggested. "It's not far. She can rest, and we can figure out what to do next." Jack nodded in agreement. "I'll help carry her. Do you think we should call someone? The authorities, maybe?" Tom hesitated, his gaze drifting back to the alien craft. "Let's hold off on that. We don't know what we're dealing with here, and I don't want to jump to conclusions that could lead to complications." Carefully, they lifted the alien, her wings folding around her like a protective cocoon, and made their way to Tom's cabin, unaware of the consequences their good intentions would soon bring. Tom's cabin, nestled among towering pines, had never housed anyone more extraordinary than a few lost hikers. Now, as he and Jack gently laid the alien woman on the couch, the small, rustic space felt like the center of the universe. Jack stood back, hands on his hips. "What now? Do we just wait for her to wake up?" Tom draped a light blanket over her. "I think that's the best we can do without knowing anything about her biology. Could be dangerous to try anything else." The alien's breathing had stabilized, and the gentle rise and fall of her chest was reassuring. Her face was serene, and in sleep, she appeared almost angelic. The men decided to give her space, retreating to the kitchenette to brew some coffee and discuss their next steps. The aroma of coffee filled the small cabin, a mundane comfort amid the surreal situation. "So, Tom, who exactly do we call about an alien?" Jack asked, accepting a mug of coffee. Tom chuckled nervously. I'm not sure the local wildlife ranger would know what to do with this one. Their laughter was short-lived as a soft moan from the living room interrupted them. They rushed back to find the alien stirring. Hello, can you hear me? Tom asked gently, leaning into her line of sight. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shimmered like molten silver. She stared at them, clear confusion etched across her face. Where am I? Her voice was melodious, the words accented and uncertain. You're safe, Jack reassured her. You had a bit of an accident, and we brought you here to make sure you're okay. She sat up slowly, her gaze flicking around the room with evident wariness. I am Avera. I must contact my people. They will be worried. Her hand went to a device attached to her wrist, but it seemed unresponsive. She frowned, her worry lines deepening. Is there anything we can do to help? Tom asked, his tone soft. Avera looked between them, her expression softening. I need to repair my communicator, but I do not understand your technology. Jack stepped forward. Show us what you need. Maybe we have something similar. Reluctantly, Avera held out the device. It was sleek, unlike any Earth-made technology, but the basic premise seemed similar to a mobile phone. Tom fetched his toolkit, and together, they began to tinker with the alien device, guided by Avera's instructions. Like this? Tom asked, adjusting a tiny component with a pair of tweezers. Yes, but more gently, Avera directed, her eyes intently watching every move. The collaborative effort was tense but exciting. Every so often, Avera would explain a function of the device, and Tom and Jack would share a look of amazement. Finally, with a soft beep, the device lit up, emitting a gentle, pulsing light. Avera sighed in relief, her shoulders relaxing. Thank you, she said, a genuine smile gracing her lips. I can contact my ship now. Just out of curiosity, Jack said as Avera tapped at her device. Where are you from? Like, which part of the galaxy? Avera looked up from her device, considering how much to share. I am from Aridia, a planet many light years away from here. Our society is peaceful. We explore to learn, not to conquer. Tom and Jack exchanged impressed glances. Well, welcome to Earth, Avera, Tom said. Sorry your visit started with a crash. Her smile widened, and she responded, her voice warming. And I am grateful for your kindness. As the device buzzed with incoming messages, the men knew that their world had just expanded infinitely, and the universe suddenly didn't seem quite so vast. The cabin, once just a simple structure in the woods, had become a diplomatic ground, a first bridge between distant worlds. Tom watched as Avera engaged in a lengthy conversation via her newly repaired device, her expression shifting from relief to intense focus. Jack, meanwhile, rifled through the cabinets for something to eat, eventually settling on a pack of instant noodles. Ever had Earth cuisine, Avera? Jack asked, waving the packet. Avera turned from her device, her curiosity piqued. I am unfamiliar with your food. Is it safe for my consumption? We can check the ingredients for anything unusual, Tom suggested, taking the packet to read the label aloud. Wheat flour, palm oil, salt, less than 2% of artificial flavorings. Nothing too exotic, I suppose. Avera nodded, still uncertain but willing to trust. I will try. As the water boiled, Tom set up a small table, and Jack explained the concept of instant noodles. It's not exactly gourmet, but it's a staple for many here. Avera listened intently, her head tilting slightly as she processed the information. And you consume this regularly? More often than I'd like to admit, Tom chuckled. Once the noodles were ready, they sat around the table. Avera tentatively took a forkful, mimicking Tom's movements. Her first taste was one of confusion, then delight. It is different, but pleasant. Jack laughed. Wait till you try pizza. The conversation turned to lighter topics, such as Earth's culture and popular activities. Avera shared anecdotes of Aridian pastimes, many involving elaborate aerial dances, which sounded breathtaking to Tom and Jack. Do you have games? Activities for enjoyment? Avera asked, eager to learn more about their lifestyle. We do. Jack jumped up and fetched a deck of cards. Ever played poker? No, what is this poker? Avra's eyes gleamed with curiosity. Tom and Jack explained the basics of poker, setting up a friendly game. The rules took some explaining, especially the concept of bluffing, which Avra found particularly amusing. So you deceive each other for strategic advantage, she summarized, a smile playing at her lips. Exactly. Jack dealt the cards. It's all in good fun. As they played, Avra's understanding of the game deepened, and her initial hesitation gave way to a competitive edge. She caught on quickly, much to Tom's surprise. You're a natural, Tom said as Avra won her third hand in a row. This is enjoyable, Avra admitted. Learning through play is universal, I think. Their evening of card-playing revealed more than just each other's ability to bluff. It highlighted the universal joy of sharing experiences, even simple ones, across cultures. Their laughter filled the cabin, a sound that seemed to bridge worlds. As the night wound down, Avra looked thoughtful. Your world is very different from mine, but there is comfort in your customs. Tom nodded, feeling a profound connection. There's something special about sharing parts of our lives, isn't there? Makes the universe seem a bit smaller. Yes, smaller and more intricate, Avra agreed. Their game night ended with a plan to explore more of Earth's games and possibly introduce some from Aridia. It was a small step toward understanding each other's worlds, but as they cleared the table, the significance wasn't lost on any of them. In the simplicity of shared meals and card games, they had found a common ground, a starting point for deeper friendship. Tom awoke to the early chirps of birds outside his cabin and the muffled sounds of Jack and Avra chatting in the living room. Stretching, he shuffled out of his room, drawn by the smell of coffee brewing and a surprisingly pleasant aroma of something sweet baking. Morning, Tom greeted, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Good morning, Tom, Avra replied, her voice cheerful. Jack is teaching me how to make pancakes. Tom raised his eyebrows in amusement as he saw Jack standing by the stove, instructing Avra on the finer points of flipping pancakes. You've picked up quite the skill for a beginner, Tom commented, noting a stack of perfectly golden pancakes on a plate. It's an interesting process, Avra observed. The transformation of liquid to solid under heat is quite satisfying. Jack grinned, proudly flipping another pancake. Wait till you try eating them. That's the best part. The three of them sat down to breakfast, and Avra tentatively drizzled some syrup over her pancakes before taking a bite. Her eyes lit up with pleasure. This is delicious. The flavors are simple yet profound, as are many joys in life, Tom said, watching her delight. The morning felt easy and full of promise. After breakfast, Tom suggested a walk in the forest to show Avra more of the Earth's natural beauty. Jack decided to stay behind to clean up, so Tom and Avra set off alone. As they walked, the forest around them alive with the sounds of wildlife. Tom pointed out various plants and birds, explaining their roles in the local ecosystem. Avra listened intently, her fascination evident. This world is very vibrant, she remarked. On Aridia, our flora and fauna are not as diverse. Much of our wildlife adapted to a more uniform environment. I'd love to see that someday, Tom mused, imagining the alien landscapes Avra described. Their path led to a small clearing where the light filtered through the trees in warm, dappled patterns. Avra looked around, a serene smile playing on her lips. This place feels peaceful. It's one of my favorite spots, Tom shared. I come here often when I need to think or just escape for a while. Avra nodded understandingly. Spaces like these are sacred. They sat on a fallen log, the silence comfortable between them. Avra turned to Tom, her expression thoughtful. You have shown me great kindness, Tom, and patience, not just in rescue, but in sharing your world with me. Tom met her gaze, his heart stirring with an emotion he hadn't anticipated. I'm glad I can share it with someone who appreciates it so deeply. The air between them felt charged, and slowly, almost hesitantly, Avra reached out her hand to gently touch Tom's. Her touch was light, but the connection was palpable. Tom's breath caught slightly, and he turned his hand to clasp hers. Avra, You do not need to speak, she interrupted softly. Some things are understood beyond words. They sat there for a long time, hand in hand, the forest around them a witness to their burgeoning connection. It was a moment of mutual recognition, of two vastly different beings finding common ground, not just in the sharing of cultures, but in the simple, profound bond of shared emotions. As they eventually walked back to the cabin, their hands remained linked, a silent testament to their deepening bond. The simplicity of the moment belied the complexity of their situations, but for now, they reveled in the peaceful simplicity of connection. By the time Tom and Avra returned to the cabin, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The evening was cool and crisp, an invitation to stay outside just a little longer. "Have you ever seen a sunset back on Aridia?" Tom asked, gesturing towards the vibrant colors streaking across the sky. Avra watched the horizon, her eyes reflecting the pink and orange hues. "We have sunsets, but they are not like this. Our atmosphere scatters light differently. It's more monochromatic." Tom found a spot near the edge of the woods, where the view was unobstructed. "Stay here a minute," he said, jogging back to the cabin. He returned with a blanket and a thermos filled with hot chocolate, which he had quickly prepared, eager to prolong their time together. "Here," he said, spreading the blanket on the grass. "Let's watch the sunset properly." They sat close together, sharing the blanket and the thermos. Avra sipped cautiously at the hot chocolate, then smiled. "This is warming. It has a richness to it. It's a favorite comfort of mine," Tom confessed, "especially on nights like this." As they watched the sun sink lower, the conversation drifted from small talk to more personal subjects. Tom shared stories of his childhood, spent running through these woods, and Avra talked about her life as a young explorer among the stars. "It seems lonely," Tom observed, traveling through space. "It can be," Avra agreed, "but there is also a peace in the solitude. You find parts of yourself in the silence." The last of the sunlight faded, leaving them under a blanket of stars. The intimate stories had woven a deeper intimacy between them, one that felt as vast as the night sky. Tom turned to look at Avra, his voice a soft murmur. "I've never met anyone like you, Avra. You've seen so much, yet you appreciate the simple things. It's captivating." Avra met his gaze, her eyes alight with the starlight. "And I have never felt a connection like this, Tom. Not with anyone on Aridia or any other world." The air between them was charged with an electric current of mutual recognition and desire. Slowly, Tom reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Avra's face. She closed her eyes briefly at the touch, then opened them, her expression full of warmth. "May I?" Tom asked, his hand lingering near her face, asking for permission to close the distance between them. "Yes," Avra whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, a tender exploration that soon deepened as they drew closer, their arms wrapping around each other. The kiss spoke of the nights spent sharing stories, the days learning from each other, and the silent moments that said more than words ever could. As they finally parted, breathless under the starlit sky, Avra rested her forehead against Tom's. "What are we doing?" she asked, half laughing, half serious. "I don't know," Tom admitted, "but I don't want it to stop." They didn't say much after that, choosing instead to communicate through touch and shared looks. Eventually, they lay back on the blanket, watching the stars in comfortable silence, each contemplating the unlikely bridge they had built between two vastly different worlds. The night deepened around them, the sounds of the forest a soft backdrop to their shared warmth. Under the celestial canopy, they found a profound connection, one that transcended their differences and spoke of deeper possibilities. In the quiet of the woods, under the gaze of the stars, Tom and Avra discovered a shared heartbeat, a rhythm that pulsed with the promise of the unknown. The morning light crept gently through the curtains of Tom's cabin, illuminating the figures of Tom and Avra as they awoke, entwined in the blanket under which they had watched the stars. The serenity of the dawn was a stark contrast to the complexity of their emotions as they stirred from their shared warmth. "Good morning," Tom murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning," Avra replied, her smile tinged with a melancholy that hadn't been there the night before. She seemed lost in thought, her gaze drifting toward the window. "What's on your mind?" Tom asked, sensing her shift in mood. Avra sat up, wrapping the blanket around her. I am conflicted. Last night was beautiful, Tom, but I cannot ignore the responsibilities awaiting me. Tom nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. I know, and I wouldn't ask you to. Just then, the sound of a vehicle approaching broke their quiet contemplation. Tom glanced out the window to see Jack pulling up in his truck, a look of urgency on his face. Tom and Avra exchanged a worried glance before heading outside to meet him. What's going on, Jack? Tom asked as they approached. Jack jumped out of the truck, his expression serious. It's about Avra. I didn't want to worry you over nothing, but I've been monitoring some unusual satellite activity since she contacted her people. It looks like they might be coming. Avra's face paled. They must not misunderstand our actions here. We need to prepare, Jack said. If they're anything like you, maybe we can explain. Show them there's no threat. Avra nodded. I will try to communicate again, clarify what has happened. She turned to Tom, her eyes full of concern. Tom, I have brought this upon you, and for that, I am truly sorry. Tom shook his head. You didn't bring this on us. It's just the situation. We'll handle it together. They returned inside, where Avra quickly activated her device, sending out a message to her people. The trio then settled into a tense wait, watching the skies and scanning the news for any indication of what might come. Hours passed with no response, the silence stretching into an uncomfortable pause in their recently vibrant interaction. Tom tried to lighten the mood, bringing out a board game they had laughed over just days before. Let's try to relax a bit, he suggested, setting up the game. We can't do much more right now. As they played, the sound of another vehicle approaching drew their attention away from the game board. Tom peered out the window to see a government SUV pulling into the driveway. A moment later, two men in suits stepped out, approaching the cabin with a purposeful stride. Tom opened the door before they could knock. Can I help you? Good morning, sir, one of the men said. We're here to discuss an unusual report we've received involving a potential extraterrestrial encounter. We understand there might be someone here who can shed some light on the situation. Avra stepped forward, her posture composed. I am the one you're looking for. I can explain everything. The agents exchanged a glance, their demeanor shifting from official to openly curious. We'd appreciate that, ma'am. For the next hour, Avra detailed her unexpected arrival on Earth, the accident, and the subsequent events. The agents took notes, asking questions that Tom and Jack helped to clarify. Thank you for your cooperation, one of the agents concluded. We'll need to report this back, but it seems clear there was no hostile intent. As the agents left, Jack let out a long breath. Well, that's one hurdle crossed. Tom nodded, his hand finding Avra's for reassurance. Whatever comes next, we'll face it just like we did this. Together, Avra squeezed his hand, grateful for the solidarity. Together, she echoed, a word that now held immense weight between them. As they turned their eyes skyward, they knew the real challenge was yet to come. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard outside Tom's cabin as they gathered inside, waiting for Avra's people to make contact. The air was thick with tension, each minute stretching longer than the last. Tom paced the living room floor, while Jack sat at the table, fiddling with a radio scanner, trying to pick up any unusual signals. Suddenly, Avra's device beeped loudly, startling them all. She quickly answered it, her face lighting up with a mix of relief and anxiety as the holographic image of an Eridian commander appeared above the device. Avra, report your status. The commander's voice was stern but carried an underlying concern. I am well, Commander. There has been a significant misunderstanding regarding my presence on Earth, Avra began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The humans here have shown me kindness and have not held me against my will. Tom stopped pacing and stood beside Avra, nodding in agreement, ready to support her account. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing Tom and then Jack, who had also stepped forward. And these are the humans you speak of? We have prepared for possible intervention. It is crucial you confirm there is no threat from them. Absolutely no threat, Commander. They assisted me after my accidental arrival. There was no capture, no hostility, Avra explained carefully. Jack chimed in. We've done our best to help and understand each other. It's been peaceful. The commander seemed to ponder their words, his gaze lingering on each face. This is highly irregular, but your words have weight, Avra. We will monitor this situation closely. Continue your dialogue with the humans, and keep us informed. As the communication ended, the relief was palpable. Avra sighed deeply, looking at Tom and Jack. Thank you both. This could have escalated without your support. Tom smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. What are friends for, right? Jack, ever the practical one, looked between them. So, what's the plan now? It seems you're still kind of a bridge between us and your people, Avra. Avra nodded. Yes, I believe I am. There's much we can learn from each other. I think continuing to share our cultures and knowledge would benefit everyone. That sounds like a great plan, Tom agreed. But first, how about dinner? All this diplomacy works up an appetite. As they prepared dinner together, the mood lightened significantly. They shared stories from their respective worlds, each tale bringing them closer, weaving a tapestry of interstellar friendship. Tom took charge of the grill, while Jack prepped the sides, and Avra observed, fascinated by the human cooking process. Cooking is quite the art form on Earth, isn't it? Avra remarked, watching Tom flip burgers with a practiced hand. It's one of our pleasures, Tom laughed. Wait until you try these. Earth-style burgers. Nothing like your synthesized meals, I bet. Avra laughed, the sound bright and clear. I am eager to experience more Earth cuisine. Dinner was a lively affair, filled with laughter and shared plans for the future. They discussed organizing a small exhibition for Avra to present her culture and technology to a wider audience, under the watchful eyes of both Earth authorities and her own people. We'll need to be careful, of course, Jack noted, his mind always on the practicalities. But I think this could be something big, a real step towards something lasting. Tom agreed, feeling a profound sense of purpose. We're part of something much bigger than ourselves now. Let's make sure it counts. As they cleaned up after dinner, Avra paused, looking at both of her Earth friends. I truly never expected to find such friendship so many light years from home. Tom smiled, clapping her on the back. Neither did we, but we're glad we did. The night ended with plans in place for future collaborations, each of them aware of the challenges ahead but buoyed by the potential of their newfound connections. They had not only averted a diplomatic crisis, but had laid the groundwork for something that might one day bridge the stars. The morning was brisk, a slight chill in the air signaling the changing seasons as Tom, Jack, and Avra stood outside the cabin. Each one was silent, contemplating the weight of the goodbye that loomed before them. The sky was a crisp blue, almost as if reflecting the mood of their final morning together. Avra adjusted the strap of the device on her wrist, a sign they all recognized as her preparing to leave. I never imagined saying goodbye would be this difficult, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Tom looked at her, his heart heavy. There's no rule saying this has to be goodbye forever, you know? Indeed, Avra replied, managing a smile. I prefer to think of it as, until next time, the plans we've set in motion, the exchanges we hope to establish. They promise more than just a simple farewell. Jack, who had been unusually quiet, cleared his throat. Yeah, and you better believe we're going to hold you to that. There's a whole lot more Earth cuisine we need to introduce you to. Their laughter broke some of the tension, and Avra's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. I will hold you to that, Jack. And perhaps next time, I can bring some of Iridia's dishes for you to try. Deal, Jack said, extending his hand, which Avra shook firmly. Tom then stepped forward, pulling Avra into a gentle hug. You've opened our eyes to so much, Avra. Thank you for trusting us, for sharing your world with us. Avra returned his embrace warmly. And thank you both, for showing me the beauty of humanity. For all the fear and uncertainty that brought me here, I leave with friendships that I treasure deeply. As they pulled apart, the sound of a soft hum filled the air, growing steadily louder. They all looked up to see a small craft descending toward the clearing near the cabin. It was sleek, like the one Avra had arrived in, but visibly undamaged. It's time, Avra said, her gaze lingering on each of her friends. As the craft landed softly on the grass, a door slid open with a hiss. Before Avra stepped in, she turned back to Tom and Jack, her expression resolute yet tender. Remember, this isn't goodbye. It's just the beginning of something new. We'll remember, Tom assured her, feeling the truth of her words deep in his bones. And we'll be here. Whenever you're ready to come back, Jack added, a grin spreading across his face. With one last smile, Avra stepped into the craft. The door closed silently behind her, and within moments, the craft lifted off the ground, ascending smoothly into the sky until it was nothing more than a speck against the vast blue. Tom and Jack stood watching long after she had disappeared, the silence between them filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. Well, Jack finally said, turning to Tom, what do we do now? Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the morning's farewell, but also the excitement of future possibilities. We get back to work. We prepare for her return, and maybe start putting together that exhibition she talked about. Jack nodded, clapping Tom on the shoulder. Let's do it. For Avra, Tom echoed, and they headed back to the cabin to begin planning. As they walked, the first leaves of autumn crunched under their feet, a reminder of the cycles of life and friendship. Whatever lay ahead, the bonds they had formed with Avra would endure, a bridge between worlds that would continue to grow, fostering a deeper understanding not just between two friends, but between two vastly different worlds.